Hello and welcome. This is Rooflemonger, my friends. Here we are. We're going to be talking about the new Virtua Fighter again today because there's some interesting things to talk about. So after the big hubbub of the Wolf Hawkfield trailer and the Virtua Fighter Direct, another thing that they did for Virtua Fighter, which did not get as much press, is they put out a little bit of an art direction documentary. And it helps give us more info and recontextualize certain other things that have happened that we know about for Virtua Fighter. So one of the big things that was mentioned here is Virtua Fighter is tied with innovation. And if you catched some of the developer interviews right around when the new Virtua Fighter was announced, they talked about that a lot. VF is an innovator. VF does stuff and other people copy. And innovation is very much at the core of this experience. Now, it's not that this is not going to be some fighting game, they're going to invent some whole new genre out of whole cloth or nothing like that, but they're going to change things up in how the game plays, and especially on the presentation end of things. One of the things they're looking to do here is bring Virtua Fighter's reality aspect, as in the fact it's a much more realistic fighter as compared to more, traditional fighting games, to the forefront, and with RGG Studio also enhancing the narrative strength, where frankly with Virtua Fighter almost none existed before. Like they mentioned, the original games, there was not much character depth. Like when we had that Wolf trailer, right? And we had the announcer talking about, oh, he had a faction, he was kicked out of the faction, he had a retirement, now he's back. That is literally, I'm not overselling this at all. This is literally the biggest lore dump for Wolf in all of Virtua Fighter history. I know that doesn't sound like much, but truly Virtua Fighter, when it comes to characterization, story lore, all that kind of stuff, it's been so far behind the scenes. Even a small amount of characterization in a small trailer is now the greatest they've ever done. And there's more to talk about here, actually, because this trailer gave away more than I thought originally, and we're going to come back to it. But yeah, it's never been a priority, and now it's gonna be one. So one of the layers of innovation is just, making the story and characterization just such a bigger deal than it currently is. And they're here to help translate it visually. And once again, we're going to circle back to that Wolf thing, because there's something there to me as a wrestling fan that's gigantic in terms of characterization, and 99% of y'all will miss it. So what does innovating fighting games really mean, right? It's a genre, and every new fighting game takes its own stab at a new mechanic, a new meter, a new something. The genre is not stagnant in that way, right? But presentation and how things translate over with presentation is definitely somewhere to be improved. Especially given the framework that they're working in is we want a more realistic martial arts presentation. And if you might recall this exact footage right here, so this was the first ever gameplay we saw of the game. So on that note, they mentioned in this documentary, Virtua Fighter's always been praised for the quality of its action, the visuals, right? Even old Virtua Fighter 5 still looks great when you look at the gameplay and just the overall fluidity of the combat. Fluidity and flow is somewhere, frankly, Virtua Fighter is not really matched by any other fighting game. And there's a bit in this documentary I want to highlight on because it makes some of that very small footage that we saw earlier much more recontextualized. And that's just the basic blocking. We go against having a uniformed guard move. So when this came out, one of the biggest things people were talking about was how people just reacted by moving and attacking each other, right? It's a lot more than just static block. Every strike has a specific parry based to it. Not a static, just universal block. I hold my arms up and block whatever's coming. When you're blocking the moves in the new Virtua Fighter, every attack has its own unique defensive animation tied to it. Obviously, attack has XYZ animation, but each defense, each successful block, if you will, also has an appropriate animation tied to it. And that's a level of fidelity we simply don't have in other fighting games, actually. It's not to say the concept's never been done. Don't get it confused, Virtua Fighter's always had this to a degree, but as you can see, this is much more muted in compared to how it is in VF6 right now. Same with Street Fighter 6, more current product, right? For parrying does make a differentiator between, okay, is this a mid or is this a low? And it'll alternate between attacks. But what you see here is just so much more specific, right? It's not just, is this a mid or is this a low? These block animations are directly contextually tied to the attack that's coming your way for each specific attack. When you're talking about innovating in fighting games, innovating visual fidelity is definitely one of the main ways you can do it. Presentation is everything in a fighting game. Like just this one right here alone, right? Stella, not Sarah, lifting up her leg specifically to avoid the kick. It's not just checking, is this some random low? No, it's that very specific kick. And as this documentary goes into, this is no accident. The guard moves are directly linked to the attacks they parry. We're looking at further ways to insist on that mode of expression. When you're looking to build on the fact that your fighting game is more quote-unquote realistic than other fighting games, this is definitely how you do it. Now, obviously, game's not out yet, right? I'm sure not every single attack in the game will have its own just bespoke block animation. You know, one character's mash, punch, punch, punch is probably not going to be wildly different from another character's mash, punch, punch, punch. You can build a library of appropriate defensive gestures based on the move, right? But even what was in that older trailer is beyond what modern fighting games do right now. Presentation is king, and RGG Studios, the people who are making this new Virtua Fighter, they know a thing or two about presentation. And this is where we're going to circle back to Wolf now, right? Because also in this documentary, it made me look at the trailer again, and then I noticed something that blew my mind. So then when I talk about faithfully portraying each martial art discipline in the character design, right? And obviously, well, pro wrestling is the ultimate of all martial arts. That's why in UFC, nobody uses pro wrestling because it's too strong against other martial arts. You know, got to keep things fair, right? And there was just one level of detail with Wolf specifically, okay? I'm obsessed with wrestling, too much so. My earliest memory in life is Hulk Hogan versus King Kong Bundy. I could have been a doctor, I could have been a politician. Instead, I wasted my life being a wrestling fan. But there's a detail here, even though it's an admittedly small detail, that makes me really believe this whole innovation through presentation thing they're trying to pull off, they get it. Like one of the things here they're talking about is some years have passed in the story, right? So some time has passed between Virtua Fighter 5 and this time, and a lot of the cast are older. You know, Akira's older, he's got gray hair, he's got a beard. Wolf's very obviously older. Looks like he's pushing 50 in the new trailer. If there's one thing RGG Studio does better than everyone else in the industry is they know how to portray middle-aged men. This line right here though, each of them has experienced a lot, which shows on them physically. Like, you guys just don't appreciate how much they're committed to the bit on that. So let's go back to that Wolf trailer. What am I talking about specifically? It's a super, super small detail, but to me, as a lifelong wrestling fan, it means the world. It means they get it. It means they understand not just the character, but wrestling itself. Look at Wolf. What is that right there? What is on his knee? That's a knee brace. Why is there a knee brace? Why are you showing a sign of physical weakness in your character you're trying to hype up here in your new trailer? Because he's a middle-aged wrestler, and him having a knee brace means there's an attention to detail there that's better than any other fighting game that's ever done a wrestler character ever before. Wrestling is awful on the body, and the knees are one of the first things to go. A lot of your favorite wrestlers of all time, they've had to wrestle in knee braces at one point or another. Hell, someone like Stone Cold Steve Austin, he spent most of his so-called prime in knee braces, and most people didn't think twice. They just thought, oh, it's part of the outfit. That wasn't just cosmetic. He needed that stuff. Victoria, a great woman wrestler in an era where there was no good woman wrestlers, right? She almost always had her knee brace on, especially in like the later TNA years. I see this and I immediately associate this with you're a wrestler with some miles on you. You have been through the ringer. You are not at your physical prime anymore. Not even close. But you're experienced, you've probably changed your work style to match your physical limitations. Like Stone Cold back in the day used to be a technical wrestler, and then he changed that for a more brawling style because he couldn't do that stuff no more because his body wouldn't let him. As a lifelong wrestling fan, I see a knee brace on Wolf, and that tells a story that cannot be told through any amount of narration or lore back dumps. You talk about innovation through presentation, that's the mother lode right there. Like, fighting games have no shortage of wrestlers. Wrestler is one of the most common professions of a fighting game character. But for a lot of these characters, like, how much real wrestling is there? Like, okay, yeah, some characters will do some of the moves. Other guys wear a mask. Hey, some wrestlers wear masks. Hell, someone like Zangief. Zangief is the most famous fighting game wrestler, right? He didn't have much actual wrestling in him until Street Fighter 6. Before Street Fighter 6, there was very little actual wrestling to his presentation. In comparison, Wolf's always kind of been the best presentation, specifically of wrestling, in a fighting game. His moveset will shift game to game because he keeps switching up his moveset for moves that are famous in America and Japan for pro wrestling. We have Stone Cold Centers, we have Emerald Flosions, we have Jackhammers, we got Shining Wizards, we got everything there is. We got all wrestling here. And I see that little detail of the knee brace and like, no, this is a wrestler's wrestler. You know, he's middle-aged, it's RGG Studios, he's middle-aged, his body's sort of failing him. This is not a character strength, this is a character weakness to have it, but he's still showing up because he's a worker. He's here to wrestle. And if he's got to put on a brace to wrestle, so be it. That little detail has done more for any wrestler ever in fighting games than anything that's come before. This is wrestling nerd in me coming out, but I truly believe that, right? That's just a next level of presentation for a quote-unquote martial art. So innovation through presentation, they get it. With Wolf, they're showcasing a depth to a character and what they're all about with just a small visual flair that blew me away. I've never seen in any other fighting game character, really. Stuff like the block animations, that means so much because like obviously it looks better as a presentation, it looks better as a spectator sport, right? When the block animations are much more accurately lining up to whatever attack's coming your way. And that can be great for visual learning as well. Maybe if we see a certain kind of block animation, it's just that much more easy to tell if this move is super punishable on block, or maybe if this move is advantage on block. 3D fighting games have so many more just overall moves than 2D fighting games, right? And one of the most difficult things to tell is this move negative? Is this move plus? Or is this move punishable? Like, is this move negative 11 or is it negative 12? That could be the difference between a punisher or nothing, right? And it's the same block animation either way. Who knows? Who can tell? You got to learn the frame data. That's it. And everyone's got to learn the frame data in the end. I know. But like stuff like that, for people who are more visual learners, that can just help out a lot. It helps skipping, going to a wiki page to learn all that kind of stuff. If I see this kind of block animation and say they stagger a little bit, right? Okay, if I stagger a little bit, I'm probably negative. They're probably plus. If we have a bespoke block animation for a certain attack where it looks like I stopped them dead in their tracks, maybe I'm definitely get a punish off of that somehow. Like y'all know, I'm basically a VF shill. I'm not here to hide it. But stuff like this gives me so much more hope, so much more expectations out of this new Virtua Fighter project. For Wolf, I noticed that last night with the brace, and it just kind of made me sit and think like, wow, they get it. And if they get it there, they're probably going to get it on a lot of different other things. And basically, it got me excited, it got me hyped, so I'm just here to share that with you and hopefully share some of that excitement and hype. Just saw it, figure I'd point it out, figure it'd be nice to learn. So if you didn't know, hey, well now you know. But other than all that, my friends, that is the video. We'll get more VF news sometime in the future, hopefully Combo Breaker, which is later in the month. Until then, well, I'll cover it when it comes, but till then, that's it, that's all. So thank you very much for watching. Hope this video has found you well, and go out and play some Virtua Fighter.